when I tell people that they have grown up surrounded by propaganda and psychological manipulation, I don't think they fully understand the extent of it. And a great example is the Department of Defense, which before World War II was the Department of War. They rebranded because the American public had become a little bit weary of war, and because what they learned from the British about psychological manipulation during World War II, because the British had been mastering the art of psychological manipulation for literally hundreds of years. I mean, this goes back to 1600 with the British East India Company, which of course we all kind of hear about in school, but I don't think people understand what the British East India Company was. They weren't just some for-profit venture. They were an arm of the Royal Crown and Britain trying to take over the world. In fact, they had complete access to the military. So the British East India Company would identify countries that they wanted to trade with or whatever it might be, and they would try to establish a stronghold. And if by any chance they had difficulty, they would actually bring in the British Royal Navy. But as they were doing this, they were running all of these sophisticated psychological operations. They had spies, they were manipulating, they were trying to get people into positions of power that would be pro-trade with Britain. And of course, if all that failed, they would bring in the military. And because of that, the English Crown gave the East India Company a complete monopoly over India and all of Southeast Asia. They said, that's yours. No one else can do business there. And I don't think they meant just Britain. They meant anyone in the world, right? I mean, the British Empire, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, fast forward to World War II, and the British military had been doing these psychological operations for literally hundreds of years. So America starts working really close with Britain, and they are enamored with how good they are at this psychological manipulation. I mean, they are breaking all of the German codes. They're deciphering all of the German secrets. They're capturing German spies, and they're forcing them to relay misinformation to the German military. They have British people that speak German living in Germany, going to the government, volunteering to be spies, but really they're double agents the entire time. I think Operation Double Cross might have been the name of it, but they are running these sophisticated psychological operations. So America sees this and says, wow, we are woefully unprepared to deal with these other intelligence agencies from other countries, which, by the way, everyone loves to be anti-CIA and anti-FBI, and you would think with the things I talk about I am, but the devil you know, because do you really want Britain running their psychological operations on us and us having nothing, or Mossad running their psychological operations, Jeffrey Epstein, honeypots, right? Like, the world of espionage is a real thing, and it is here to stay. So after World War II, the American government decides that they needed to up their own espionage abilities. So they passed the National Security Act of 1947. And one of the things that the National Security Act did is it rebranded the Department of War as the Department of Defense, because the American people are just a little bit more likely to get behind the Department of Defense, which is kind of ironic because they said, oh, well, this National Security Act isn't to manipulate the American people, but that right there, right, is clearly designed to manipulate the American people as well as the newly established United Nations, who sucks, right? To say, hey, we're not the Department of War, we're the Department of Defense here. Well, the National Security Act of 1947, the same one that changed the Department of War and made it the Department of Defense, also established something else. A little agency known as the CIA. And this is why I write books on how information is controlled, the history of fake news, our rights, the corruption of the banking system, and so much more. It's why I started a homeschool company and build homeschool curriculum. And later this week, our first ever audiobook drops, and I'm pumped about it. I've taken books that are hundreds of years old, and I'm turning them into audiobooks. They're not politically correct. Like, they give you the real, just raw history of what actually happened. First book is on George Washington, drops later this week. That one's for adults as well as middle school, high school kids, but I'm fired up about that one. So check that out, classicallearner.com. We are changing the world, and I love that you're a part of it.